Everybody was on their phones during the lockdown. I was like, you know what? Why don't I just be the guy they're all watching? I would advise most people, hey, pick a niche, stay in it, and go dominate that niche. You know, if you're doing it for your business, you will get business from just short form. I don't worry about AdSense or any of that crap. I want to get people to my businesses, make them aware of you with short form, you know, give them some pieces of the pie in medium form, and then long form is where they're going to become, you know, lifelong fan.
What are the best platforms you should be focusing on as a creator that wants to earn extra money on the side, or as a business owner that wants to get more leads, clients, and sales? In this episode of the Think Media podcast, I'm sitting down with Ryan Pineda, who is currently running 7 different 7 to 8 figure businesses, is pumping out massive amounts of social media content across platforms, has generated well over 500 million views, 1.5 million followers, but he didn't start there. He started like everybody else at zero. And so we're going to be unpacking some of the frameworks for scaling and going to the next level. But also, if you're starting from scratch right now, how should you best be spending your energy on social media? Ryan is the author of The Wealthy Way, and I'm excited for this episode. Ryan, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, good to see you, man.
So tell us a little bit about what you do if people are just meeting you. You do a lot, and it's all happened pretty quickly over the last few years, but give us a little recap of your business building, social media building career that's led to now.
Yeah. So, you know, for those who don't know me, I'll make this story short, but, you know, I started out as a baseball player, never wanted to do social media or business. And I was fortunate enough to get drafted by the Oakland A's and pursue the dream of playing Major League Baseball. But, you know, for me, people don't know, you don't make much money in the minor leagues. So I was making $1,200 a month playing minor league baseball. And so I was kind of forced into entrepreneurship because I had to make money on the side. Nobody was going to give me a job like leaving 6 months out of the year. So, you know, my first foray into business was being a realtor. I got licensed in 2010. I absolutely hated it. I just didn't like showing houses. You know, in 2010, prices were like at all-time lows, and even if you did sell a house, you didn't make much money. After a couple of years, I kind of quit. I kept my license active, but I didn't really pursue it. I got into other side hustles like substitute teaching and like flipping cell phones and different things. But my first big breakthrough came when I started flipping couches. And so I've done some YouTube videos on it that have gone viral. Yeah, I started flipping couches, and like that was the start of my entrepreneurial career where I'm like, wow, I don't really need to ever get a job. Like I can just make money doing things. Eventually that led into house flipping. I started doing that in 2015 and maxed out all my credit cards to flip my first house. And thankfully it worked out, made $25,000 that first flip. And eventually it just kept compiling and compounding over and over. And since then we flipped over 500 homes, majority here in Las Vegas. And just during that time, I started to develop business acumen. I started to get better at teaching because a lot of people wanted to know how to flip houses and other things. And I got into the social media scene during the pandemic because I was just looking at my house flipping business. You know, we had, I think, 50 flips going on, and we're going into COVID, and everybody's like, oh, everything's going to crash and burn. And I'm like, I don't think it is, but if it is, let me like diversify a little bit. And I had seen just this explosion of social media, like, and I knew it was coming because, you know, TikTok was starting to get popular. Everybody was on their phones during the lockdown. I was like, you know what? Why don't I just be the guy they're all watching? And so I just started making content during, it was about March, the end of March in 2020. I was like, you know what? I'm doing this. I created a TikTok account, started with that first. And then I think I published my first YouTube video like May 1st, which is today, actually. 3 years to the day.
Wow.
Yeah. That I published my first YouTube video, and the rest is history, dude.
That is wild. And so tell me about those first uploads. When you started social media, what kind of content did you start with?
Mainly real estate. You know, I knew that for me, my goal originally was like, hey, I want to be the most known house flipper on social media. That was my goal. And so I knew I needed to make YouTube videos. I needed to make TikToks. I needed to, you know, Instagram didn't have Reels yet, but those were my 2 main focuses. And so I got pretty good at short form content really fast. Like no entrepreneurs were really doing it yet. Nobody like took TikTok seriously, but I kind of mastered that first. And then, you know, on YouTube, I knew that it was going to be more long based. And so I was like, you know what, let me make some tutorials on how to flip. how to buy rental properties, how to go manage contractors, raise capital to buy deals, what to look for, mistakes I've made. And, I did house tours and all this stuff. So a lot of it was real estate based.
I love that. And so fast forward to today now, what content are you seeing perform best for you?
It's a good question, man. Now being in it for 3 years, you see the algorithms and everything's just constantly changing, right? And, we'd had months where YouTube Shorts just went off. And then, my shorts that went off were always like random broad-based shorts. I think at one of my events, you did a presentation on my channel and you were like, look, Ryan's talking about watches right here. He's talking about cars right here. He's talking about, a vacation right here. And I've realized, like, obviously the broader you go, the more views you'll get. And so I think broad is always going to, quote unquote, perform best. But does that actually turn into dollars for your business? That's the question, right? Like, I think it's good for bringing awareness to who you are, but the real money is going to be made in those more niche videos that, if somebody goes through a house flipping tutorial, I'm going to shout out my education company, Wealthy Investor, to tell them, hey, you want to learn how to actually do this? You want us to come side by side with you? Apply here. And that leads to leads every single day that turn into revenue for our business. So, what performs best? It's hard to say. It depends how you judge it.
So the broad appeal strategy is very powerful if you want more reach. And sometimes we can circle back to that. But if you got a lot less views on a house flipping tutorial, the intent of the viewer obviously is already pre-qualified, essentially. They want that kind of information. So if you being an educator now of how people can get into the flip game, that's a much higher quality of a view. So what is your strategy and approach? Do you just kind of do both? You go wide and deep? And is it a mix, or what do you do today?
My strategy now is a little bit different. So I'm a lot more broad than just real estate now. I've kind of ventured off into general entrepreneurship. I'm doing more faith-based content as well. So I'm not a good example for most people to follow, because I would advise most people, hey, pick a niche, stay in it, and go dominate that niche. Because you can confuse the audience with all these different things. Like, I posted a golf video the other day. It does hurt views when you kind of confuse the algorithm like that. But for me, I guess at this point in my life, in my career, I'm not necessarily trying to optimize every day. Like, I am just doing the things I want to do.
Yeah.
And so, probably the most kind of content I do are podcasts. So I have the Wealthy Way podcast, and I've interviewed a ton of amazing guests, and sometimes I'll do a solo podcast, and I love just podcasting like this, because it's easy. I don't have to script it, just free flow. Whereas other just normal videos, you got to plan it out, you got to script it, you got to do all these things. I would much rather sit with somebody for an hour than film a solo video.
Yeah. And I think you described it well. What people that are not in your season, which very few people are, with the momentum and the team and the systems and the personal brand, they shouldn't imitate what you're doing today. They should imitate what you're doing when you started. And You started with a niche, built massive credibility in real estate, specifically flipping, massive momentum there. And there's something about it, I think that's the mistake people make. They're like, well, you're telling me to niche down. You're telling me not to niche down. It's like, no, I'm telling you, what season are you in?
Yeah.
Because once you kind of break through, there's already awareness in your personal brand. There's people that follow you for you as well, including your multiplicity of interests.
Yeah. And we get a lot of people at our events who are like, dude, I just want to really own multiple businesses like you. That's why I follow you.
Yeah.
And real estate is definitely a core part of it, but they all want to venture off into other things too.
Yeah.
And they follow for what the Wealthy Way is all about, with just having balance and family and everything else. And so I think people will follow you. I don't know that you have to be just so only business and whatever your niche is. I think allowing other elements of your life to come through the content is good, because it makes you more relatable. But, do you need to make full videos dedicated to, your faith or your family? Probably not, starting out.
I think, would you agree with this? I think there's a difference between short form and long form. And, at our event, Growth Video Live, you spoke, also Gary Vee spoke, and Gary spoke about short form is different than long form, meaning I think there's permission to play in broad appeal on short form. You're not going to condition necessarily the YouTube algorithm in the same way. Short form can be a massive broad appeal reach play, meaning if you post a reel, like I'm posting reels on Instagram that aren't about YouTube tips, but it's a place where you can just experiment and potentially We've had some go 20, 25, 27 million views. Can that mix up the algorithm? Maybe. What's funny is then we could post another one and only gets 10,000 views. So your core audience is going to be seeing that. This other one went viral in a whole nother way. But would you agree or disagree with short form reels, YouTube shorts is maybe a place to play with reach, whereas long form being like maybe the themes of your podcast or the core videos, maybe that's more on brand because you're also crafting those episodes a little bit more. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. So the way that we always teach it at Wealthy Creator is that your short form leads to what I call medium form, which leads to long form. And so for me, thinking of it from a business marketing sense, your short form is basically like the ads. They're just awareness. Like nobody's buying something from you from a 30-second thing, right? Like your goal is to just get people to know who you are, right? And so for me, I literally put out 6 reels a day. And,
Yeah.
And
define that. That means a vertical video on multiple platforms.
Yeah, well, that's just on Instagram. We
Okay.
also do like 1 a day on YouTube. Like I don't even know how many we do on TikTok, like 3 or 4 a day.
Okay.
And they're all the same content.
Yeah.
But I just have different things on those reels. Some are repurposed from my podcast. Some are just like, hey, I sat down, I did this reel straight up. Some are just what I call ads, where I'm trying to get somebody to DM me and become a lead and, buy into one of our things. So, I think that your short form is simply just like eyeballs in marketing, because those are the easiest ways to get eyeballs, and you can be broad. You can do all these things to get people to aware of you. The goal from there is not necessarily to get someone to buy or follow from that. The goal is to get them to watch now what I call medium form, which would be like 8 to 15 minutes. And if somebody watches an 8 to 15 minute video, then they're pretty bought in. Like that's, in today's world, that's good retention. And, they're going to get to know you better, and you can explain things way more in depth. They can understand your expertise. From there, if you have something that's like an hour long, like a podcast, then they're really bought in. When I go to my own events where people have paid thousands of dollars to be there, I always hear them tell me about a podcast they listen to. And then that's not a coincidence. It's like, yeah, those are the people who are bought in. They're listening for an hour. And so if you want to think about like, if you're an entrepreneur, your customer journey, it's like, make them aware of you with short form, give them some pieces of the pie in medium form. And then long form is where they're going to become, lifelong fans.
Powerful framework. And so one of the things you do is a lot of variety content, but it seems very strategic. You mentioned earlier, as I was studying you do have like videos on a Rolex. I bought a electric Porsche, flipped it, got rid of it. Even down to semi-recently, you were doing Turo. I tested out Turo. So it's definitely under this entrepreneurial frame, but it does seem random a bit. What is your thought in planning out content, but also to the intelligent observer, you also are kind of hacking culture because Rolex is searchable. Tesla stuff, it has its own algorithm, really. Like Tesla stuff has its own passion. Is there strategic thinking going into those different things you do?
I'd like to say that we're super strategic and just it's all part of the plan, but a lot of it is just testing and throwing crap up on the wall and seeing what sticks. I'll say early on, we were much more strategic. So, if I said, hey, we're going to put out 3-4 videos this week, let's put them in buckets. And so we'd create these buckets and we'd say, hey, okay, let's do a real estate video. That's a bucket. Let's do a side hustle video. That's a bucket. Let's do, a general entrepreneur video. That's a bucket. Let's do what I would call a dynamic video, me out and about somewhere. Like that's a bucket. And so we just basically follow that pattern. And that was when we were only doing like 10 to 15 minute videos. Now the podcast is the majority of my content. And so, there's not really much prep for it. It's just like, book cool guest and let's roll.
Yeah.
And whatever happens, happens. I should go into those interviews, like thinking about the title and what we should talk about, but I just kind of just let them go wherever it goes. And, here's the thing with podcasts, it's not going to get as many views as normal videos. Like just an hour long thing will not get as many views. And so our views are down, I guess, but as part of the plan, like they're better views and they're what I want to do anyway.
Do you still batch some Reels days where you sit down when you're being filmed? So for the listener that doesn't follow you, it's a pro camera, vertical, crispy in different settings, your studio. Sometimes people follow you around.
Yeah.
You had someone filming at a Rolex shop when actually your watch appreciated or something, right?
Yeah.
And so when you sit down, do you go into those days planned?
No. So I rarely plan. So like at this point,
Yeah.
I rarely do. But those days that I film Reels, I already have somebody on my team who's already got questions lined up.
Questions.
So they've already pre-searched, what's been working, what's trending, whatever. And then they're just going to pepper me with questions for 3 hours straight.
And then you respond.
Yeah.
And are you usually one take these days?
On the Reels, I speak, you call it like speaking in TikTok. So like I'll say a sentence and then I'll take a breath and then I'll say another sentence so I can like say it as fast and concise as possible. So no, they're not in one take because I'd be long-winded.
Got it.
If I was in one take.
So someone tees you up with the question and then you build it out.
Yeah.
It's like it's built out. So maybe it's going to end up being less than 60 seconds, but it might take 5 minutes.
Right. So you might ask me, Ryan, what's the best way to start investing in real estate?
Yeah.
Like that's exactly what they would do. And I'd be like, well, I think about it for a little bit.
You start with the question?
No. So I'll just start saying, I'll just hook it and I'll be like, here's my best way to invest in real estate.
Okay.
And then like, boom, right?
Yeah. Or and you might know, here's 3 tips I have for you for if you wanted to start investing in real estate.
Whatever it is, right? So most of my videos that are like intentional like that start that way. But then like if you watch a lot of my good content is just repurposed from the podcast. And so the team is really good about just picking good clips and it's just, they do well.
What are your top 3 social media platforms right now? And I don't mean maybe for you. What do you think, if you had to only pick 3 social media platforms, which ones would you pick and why?
I think it's YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. I don't think there's really everything else would be very further behind those 3, I think.
You run paid media?
Yeah.
Would you say for paid though, Facebook or Meta Macro?
Yeah, I mean, we run Facebook ads like crazy too.
Yeah.
So I think Facebook ads are great. I mean, Facebook and Instagram, to me, they're the same thing.
But Facebook organic, it would not be you'd be focusing on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube.
Yeah. You know what's funny too is like somebody pointed out to me the other day, they were like, dude, I think you're shadow banned on Facebook. And I was like, I haven't even checked Facebook in years. Like, I don't know what's going on over there. They post it, but like, yeah, like your stuff's not getting any views over there. And I'm like, I don't know.
You're on the other side now. You've got someone teeing up questions for you. People are pulling clips out of your podcast. People are helping you film a podcast. Take it back to like even somebody that's part of your community, but that's super early.
Yeah.
So they got some money coming in from real estate flipping or whatnot, but they haven't really broken through. So maybe they're earning, 60, 70, 80K a year, maybe into the 6-figure range. But by the time you expense things out, like it's tight still. They're really trying to scale. So what advice would you have for them to get into the social media game in a sustainable way without all of the resources that you have?
Yeah. So I think that, I would focus on short form personally. You know, if you don't have a lot of time, you don't have a lot of capital, short form doesn't require both. And it's the easiest way to get known and get reach. And, if you're doing it for your business, you will get business from just short form. You don't have to make long form. Long form amplifies it for sure. Yeah, I would start today doing that. I mean, look, I created an agency to help entrepreneurs. It's called Pineda Media. Like the minimum thing you could get, I think for us is like $1,000. And, we're not going to coach you through it and stuff, but you can send us all of your short form and we'll edit it for you to look nice and all that stuff. And you'll have to post it on your own and everything. But like for $1,000, that's a great way to get started, right? Spend $1,000 a month. You can go get a reel a day and like really crush it.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me of a real estate investor friend of mine, Anton up in the Northwest. He pays about $1,500, $1,600 a month to his son, I believe. And then also to one of his assistants at Keller Williams. He's on 1 vertical video a day.
Yeah.
And then he actually does some of the posting himself, especially his team. Those individuals don't know how to title things yet or position them yet. So if he doesn't do the pre-planning, he finds himself 8, 9 at night. He'll just take the one edited file, captions on it, and he'll drop it on TikTok and take it over to Shorts.
Well, and let me add this. So back when I started TikTok 3 years ago, there was no agencies for TikTok
Sure.
who edited videos for you. So Yeah, it was like the Wild West. I had to do it all myself. So when I was like, hey, I want to become great at TikTok, I didn't realize it was going to be across all platforms eventually. It was just a TikTok back then. And I filmed 2 TikToks per day on my own for a year straight. So I filmed 700. I didn't pay anyone anything.
Yeah.
You know, I just put in the work. I edited them on the TikTok app. I added the subtitles. I added the music. And that got me to 400,000 followers on TikTok just on my own. You know, now if I were starting over today, I wouldn't do that because there's a lot of different resources available today, but that's what I did.
To leverage your time more.
Are you ready to start or grow your YouTube channel? Do you feel stuck and need help connecting the dots? Join this free web class where you'll learn the step-by-step playbook for YouTube success. We've helped thousands of purpose-driven entrepreneurs just like you grow their influence with video. Register today for this exclusive training at thinkmasterclass.com.
There's also these days, there's like a video.ai, which is like video.ai, and there's a lot of apps coming out. You could take a YouTube video, just drop the link in there, and it kicks out the vertical clips of it that AI found.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of tools. Adobe Firefly will pull B-roll and edit talking head videos for you and different things. And, you know, make sure you're subscribed to the Think Media podcast because AI really is impacting the world in a significant way. We want to bring more episodes on that. But back to the 700 uploads, how would you measure ROI? I know that it's not the same season. It's not all the factors are the same. You got to 400,000 followers, but for the skeptic, that's like, okay, that was a lot of work though. Could you attribute business ROI in those days to your business?
Oh yeah.
How?
I mean, I'll give you an example. I wasn't big in education, you know, before social media. So basically, you know, I got my career flipping houses and that's how I made, you know, my millions to start. But eventually, you know, once you have success, people are like, teach me, right? And so I was like, you know what? I don't really want to coach people. I'll just create a course that people can buy. And I wrote my first book, Flip Your Future, back in 2018. And so that was it. I was like, hey, if you want to learn, just read this book or buy this course. That's it. 2018, 2019, I think 2018, I made like $30,000 in education. 2019, I made like 50,000. And it was mainly from course sales. And I held an event both years, like a super small event, 10 people. So I wasn't like big on education. 2020 rolls around and, you know, I finally say, you know what, I'll start doing coaching. Like I'll do a weekly call and kind of see where it goes. And, you know, I'm going to create content around real estate and people are naturally going to want to go to this coaching. So I do that. And in 2020, I did 700,000. So, I mean, it 10x'd from just the fact that I had more reach. And then, you know, the next year we did, I think almost 4 million. So it's like,
yeah,
social media matters.
What year was the 700 uploads?
2020.
2020. Okay. So 2020. So on the other side of those TikToks, 2 a day that you're doing and then having an offer, that's probably the big key is the missing piece for anyone that is just doing social media, relying on the Reels fund, which got canceled, or TikTok creator.
No, don't rely on that. Like, I don't worry about AdSense or any of that crap. I want to get people to my businesses.
How do you deal with haters and negative comments as your brand has expanded to a massive level? I know that one of the biggest things that holds people back is they worry about what other people will think. There's a lot of self-doubt, getting on camera, being awkward, whether people are watching or are not watching. There's a lot of negative self-talk. Like you start thinking about like, oh, are people from high school going to judge me or something? Like,
yeah,
you know, but then also inevitably, man, once your brand really starts to grow, 100% of people who experience any kind of growth on social media start getting criticized.
Mm-hmm.
What has kind of been your approach for maybe negative comments or haters that have come your way?
Well, you know, playing baseball, I kind of got used to people judging you, right? You get booed, you get benched, it's whatever, right? Like, so I developed thick skin from playing sports. But, you know, when you just think about all the successful people in the world, right? It's like they have haters. People who don't have success don't have haters. Like nobody's going to hate on anything. So it's like when I see people so divided about LeBron, it's like, how do you hate LeBron? Like, he's so good. It makes no sense that you don't like him, but people do, right? Then somebody told me this one time. They're like, dude, to become the president, 50% of the world has to hate you.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I guess that's true, right? Like, so, and then I see these other guys on social media really make a mark because they embrace the hate. When I see like an Andrew Tate really lean into it and just explode, I'm like, oh, wow. Like, he wants the hate. And I've seen Grant Cardone do that for forever, right? And he's just like trying to instigate people to hate. I think just with success comes hate. And I also think that you shouldn't, maybe be trying to get people to hate you, but you should be saying things that not everyone's going to agree with. Like, you cannot play like both sides and always be politically correct. I say things that piss a lot of people off and I believe them. And if you don't like it, whatever.
What was one of your pieces of content that got the most pushback?
I have this framework. I call it my 3M framework. It stands for make, manage, multiply. And this is like literally what I believe is the path to becoming a millionaire really fast. I think if you follow this path, you become a multimillionaire in 5 years or less. Like, that's my, I guess, tagline.
Yeah.
But in stage 1 of make, it's about figuring out a skill to make 250 grand. Okay. You need to develop one skill, whether that's content creation, whether that's house flipping, whether that's being good at AI and coding and whatever, being a good salesperson. I don't care how you make 250, but 250 needs to be the goal, because anything less than that is not much money. And a lot of people think that that's wrong. They're like, oh, dude, freaking.
They get mad if you say that less than 250 is not much money.
But dude, if you're not making 250, like, you're not living. Right? Like, you ain't going on vacation and doing things you want to do. You're not driving a nice car. You're not, giving your kids everything. Like, dude, if you have 3 kids and you're married and you make $120,000, you know what I'm talking. Like, it's not a lot of money, especially if you live in California or one of these places. So, people get bent out of shape about that. And I mean, I get it. I mean, when I was broke, the thought of making 6 figures was like, man, this is crazy. Like, 6 figures. And then you just look at inflation and where the world is, like, no, it's 6 figures ain't much.
Got it. So you take a stance, you make a statement like that, people start, and you probably, the thing is opposite though. Some people go, oh, I'm offended. They might send it to somebody. Look at this guy. He's saying that you're broke if you make less than that. But it also is inspiring because it's challenging to people too. So it's going to attract the people that are dreaming bigger and want to follow you.
The thing is, it's going to attract the people you want anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like the people who do believe in this framework, they're going to come with me and we're rolling together. You want the people who are bought in.
Do you let your kids have phones and be on social media?
So my son's 4, and my daughter's about to be 3. And I mean, they love like watching stuff. So like my son watches Superbook on YouTube all the time.
YouTube Kids app?
Yeah. My daughter is.
Do they like Blippi?
Yeah. My daughter does.
You ever seen Gracie's Corner?
No.
Oh, dude, that's some fire.
But yeah, my daughter just will like watch reels and stuff, and she's into Disney now. But yeah, I mean, we try to limit what they do on the phone and stuff. But I mean, they love it.
And do you have a philosophy as far as do you see a dark side on social media?
Oh yeah. Yeah, Mindy, my wife, she's always trying to monitor what they're watching, because like even on the YouTube Kids app, like they got all this weird stuff that's like not kids stuff.
My wife Sonia is the same. She's like, oh, like you got to keep an eye on it, and then you can just say like no more of that, and you can kind of curate the experience.
Yeah, it's definitely got a dark side to kids, and I think that's why there's so many just like more political issues because of social media bringing all these things to light and like really amplifying agendas.
Obviously, we're talking about how powerful social media is here to build your brand, build a personal brand, build a business. But do you think that a lot of the entrepreneurs that you're coaching, do you think that they're wasting time in social media as well? Would you have advice? Do you think that's
like consuming it?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I tell people all the time, I'll be like, hey, don't watch my stuff if you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
Like you're wasting your time. Like I've now become entertainment to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a new thing of like people who are entertained thinking like they're learning, but it's just they're being entertained.
They're being entertained by entrepreneur advice, by YouTube advice, and you start discovering truly valuable content, but you think you're doing something if all you're doing is watching.
Yeah, you're mistaking like that for actually doing something. You're not.
How do you know? How could somebody do a litmus test if they're consuming more than they should be creating?
Are you doing anything with the content? Like when's I tell people this in real estate. I'm like, okay, you're on the coaching calls, whatever. And coaching calls are another form. Like you've paid to get coaching calls, and we'll be like, how many offers did you make this week? And it's like, oh, well, we didn't make any because we were, doing this, and then we were on the coaching calls, and then this. And I'm like, then we had to go network at this event. I'm like, no.
Even that.
Yeah. Like make offers.
Networking could be good, but, and right there.
Social media could be good. Coaching is good. Like all these things can be good if used properly.
And that right there you just hit on is an actual metric. How many offers did you make in the last 7 days?
Yeah. How many videos did you make?
How many videos did you actually upload, publish, and fully get? Not even just shoot and they're on your computer or on your phone. Actually completion, like got them out there into the world. And yeah, that is, we anthem that a lot here, that you want to create more than you consume. And I would argue, I'm a huge consumer, meaning a huge learner. So I'm not even necessarily saying consume less, just don't let the consumption overtake the creation, because the engine for actually earning money and building your business is actually publishing, posting. But of course you got to be learning as well. So it's a mix of both. It's not either or.
You know what's funny for me is I was never into social media. My wife, I remember, this is so funny now in hindsight, but like 5 years ago, she was just watching YouTube and stuff. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm watching YouTube. I'm like, YouTube's where you go to like learn how to tie a tie and stuff. I don't understand what you're watching. She's like, I really like this family, and like they do funny stuff and pranks and everything. I'm like, I was seriously like shocked. I was like, people watch like YouTube for entertainment? And she's like, yeah. I was like, wow, that's crazy. I thought it was just like information. And she had always told me to get on YouTube. And I was like, this is so stupid. Like nobody watches YouTube. And then, fast forward, obviously, she was right. But I don't even know where I was going with that story, but it's just like.
Well, what's wild now is.
Consumption. That's where I was going with this. So like I never consumed social media. So I didn't even understand what YouTube was or TikTok or anything. And I always looked at it as just like a tool for business. So even today, I really don't consume that much content. I'm busy like running the businesses or like doing things I enjoy, like playing golf and hanging out with the fam. Like I don't enjoy like looking at reels for an hour. I just don't.
Do you follow anybody?
I mean, I follow people.
I mean, like, is there anybody you consistently do like learning from, or is there an environment you like learning better, reading books or?
I love to read books. So that's my like preferred form of, I guess consumption.
That would be content consumption.
Yeah, content consumption.
It'd arguably be so much healthier too, on a lot of levels. Better for your brain.
It's more focused.
Yeah, it's more focused. It's deeper.
Yeah.
And in all things being equal, you're consuming content either way.
Yeah.
So in that case, it's in book form. It's richer. You're going to probably
and you're more engaged because you can't read. Like you can just watch content and just be on. You're just eyes glazed. So yeah, I read a lot of books, but I mean, the only time I watch content, so like I actually force myself to watch content so I can like actually stay up to date with what other people are doing in the content space. Yeah. Now I try to watch it while I work out. So I just moved and I got a home gym. And so I'm like, you know what? Instead of just listening to music, like let's just turn on YouTube and like that's how we'll watch content. So I've started to do that now. But what I'll usually do is I'll get super inspired to learn a new skill. And so I'll go all in on watching content for that skill. So when I first started YouTube, guess who I was watching? Think Media.
Hey.
I was watching Think Media like nonstop, and we didn't even know each other yet. But I was watching it, understanding, thumbnails are actually important. I probably should buy this camera. This is how you structure a video. Like I was consuming everything about YouTube. Then once I kind of got the hang of it, it was like, all right, what's the next thing I need to learn? Right. And so, I'd watch this guy, and then I'd go on a binge with this guy, and then I'd learn about this guy. And then, now if you looked on my YouTube algorithm, it's all golf.
Yeah.
I'm just watching golf tutorials.
No, it makes sense.
And like different things. Cause that's what I'm trying to learn. I'm like, dude, I got to get better.
And then next phase is pickleball.
I do have pickleball on there. Yeah.
But there's a friend of mine whose pickleball podcast is blowing up.
Oh, nice.
Because pickleball's a whole move. And so different content.
I might start one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So a couple more questions related to content, but as a reminder, you could check out in the show notes some of the resources in this. If you're at a level of wanting help, some done for you work, you can check out Pineda Media. We'll link that up in the show notes. They'll do a reel a day for you across channels. And there's also different levels if you want to post stuff yourself. And then there's also Wealthy Creator. And so you really focus on entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like if you're a business owner, you already have some momentum, you have some revenue. We'll list all the stuff in the show notes, and we'll get into a few more questions. But yeah, who would you say is your ideal person that you help?
Definitely entrepreneurs who already have a business, or even if you're trying to figure out a business, especially if it's online. Our main thing at Wealthy Creator is, number one, teach you how to get attention, right? So, short form's great, long form's great. Like, let's first focus on getting the attention, right? From there, now we got to go into monetization. And one thing I talked about at Growth Video Live was how I monetize Instagram. And I talked about just this quick little easy funnel I use and how it's made me millions. And, it's things like that, having the proper funnels and, calls to action and everything else that dictate how much your business is going to make. But while also not compromising the quality of the content, right? Because you don't want it to just be a giant sales pitch. And so, we go in depth on, really figuring out how to get attention in the right kind of attention, that's going to be relevant to your business, and then turn those views into dollars.
Powerful. So if you want to check out those resources, check out all of the links to those products in the show notes. But Ryan, how much money have you earned from YouTube AdSense across your channels?
You asked me that before we came. I wouldn't have known if I didn't look it up, but we're basically at about $300,000.
And do you know how many views roughly that it's off of? Or
you know what? I didn't check the podcast channel, so we're definitely over that. But yeah, I want to say it's like over 60 million views across both the channels,
and a lot of shorts views, which don't pay anywhere near as well.
No.
And so has shorts have been your biggest, most viral clips?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what are some of the highest CPMs and RPMs that you've seen, and what have you learned about that? Being in a niche, you're in a pretty lucrative niche typically.
Yeah. I was looking at it the other day, and then I tried to find it again. I couldn't find it recently. Last time I checked, our average CPM was like $45.
That's high.
And then I had times where it was like $70 to $80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think $70 to $80 CPMs a lot of times could be on like fulfilled by Amazon or drop shipping or e-commerce type of niches.
Mm-hmm.
I've also seen, I saw $80 RPM on medical RPM. So that's
RPM.
That's after the cut. That's after YouTube's cut.
Yeah.
So that's probably over $100 in CPM.
That's crazy.
But if you think about like a cancer treatment targeting baby boomers or something,
right?
Like the CPMs are off the charts. Very specific audience that for very expensive treatments or things like that.
Right.
So, how big of a deal is your YouTube AdSense and your overall business to you?
I honestly don't even look at it. It's just not important to us because it's so, I guess, small compared to everything else. Our businesses are doing, 7 figures a month, multiple 7 figures a month. And so when AdSense makes me 10 grand, it's not really a big deal.
Do you still do brand sponsorships?
I don't think I've done a sponsorship in like a year. I don't really try to do them anymore. So when I first got started, it was cool because I remember the first deal I ever got, TikTok actually gave it to me. They're like, hey, TurboTax wants to do a deal with you. They'll pay you $3 grand for a TikTok. And I was like, really? $3 grand for making a freaking 20-second TikTok? Tight. So I did it. Then they sent a couple others and it was cool. And then, I had like ZipRecruiter. I had like, these bigger brands, and I was getting paid like 10 grand to make a TikTok. After that, I just, and I never really did YouTube sponsors because it was just not really worth the headache. So, I just really, it wasn't worth the time anymore, because even when I just look at it from an opportunity cost perspective, I'm like, man, well, we have coaching programs that cost 10 grand. One of these videos, if it just leads to one sale, that's 10 grand.
Your own stuff, your own offers.
Yeah. And I don't have to like deal with these brands or anything. I can promote my own stuff as much as I want. So yeah, we're not super focused on that. But that being said, I am looking at now with the podcast, other revenue streams, because, podcasts are interesting. Especially if it can blow up and, be one of the top ones, which I think it will be. But, I don't kind of mind sponsors in that scenario where it's just like, all right, play their ad,
right,
every episode, whatever.
And you really can do multiple things. I mean, a lot of podcasts I listen to, sometimes they go like 2 ads back to back and they mention the thing that they have as well.
Well, one thing too is like, we've had paid guests for our podcast too. And so like that's pays more than a podcast or a sponsor.
How do you broker those type of deals?
I've just advertised for it on like Instagram stuff. I'm like, hey, you want to be on the podcast? Fill out a form, right? And then like we'll get really good guests who obviously aren't going to pay anything. And then we'll get maybe some people who might be unknown, but are very successful, and they'll pay to be on.
So you kind of on the back end juggle those. You're like, okay, this person's not really known, so they're not going to bring that influence piece or whatever.
Yeah.
But you vet their credibility.
Yeah.
And then someone on your team like makes them an offer.
Yeah, just sales team. But like I tell people this all the time because a lot of our students at Wealthy Creator are like, dude, how do we get on the podcast or get on other people's podcast or anything else? And I'm like, look, today there's so many successful people in the world. Like being successful is not a prerequisite for or it's not like gonna get you on a show. I know like Bigger Pockets, a lot of people want to be on Bigger Pockets. Like, dude, there's like so many real estate investors who have made millions of dollars. Like there's so many talented real estate agents. Like what's going to get you on the show? Well, you got to look at it from, the people who are running the show's perspective. They're looking at tons of guests. They've got staff and overhead and production and all this stuff, right? So how can you add value to them? And you should always be thinking that from the business sense anyway. Like, how can I add value to you? That's how I always look at everything. And it's like, the only way you could add value to me, is probably number one, you have an audience already. You're already known. That's great. You come on the show, obviously, hopefully you're going to talk about the show and it's going to bring more exposure. It's a win-win, right? If you're just a successful house flipper, it's like, all right, cool. Like I'm a successful house flipper too. It's not a big deal. Like I could just talk about it without you.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, most stories are very similar in that space. Like, yep, I started doing this. I'm like, I could tell the story when it's going to happen. Right. So, being successful is just like, that's a prerequisite. It's not even like that doesn't get you in.
Yep.
Right. But then the other way would just be financially. All right. If you're going to help us pay for all these costs we incur, cool. Like,
yep.
That's a win-win.
Yeah, that's smart, especially for the business-minded creator. Makes it cleaner, makes it faster. You can find podcasts that allow you to jump on.
Well, and also too, these guys wouldn't have an opportunity, right? Because a lot of them are very successful, right? But they don't have a following. No one knows who they are. And so, they're not going to get on other podcasts. And it's like, man, how do you get this? Like, if you're that person, how do you become known then?
Our friend Travis Chappell has Guestio.
Yep.
That's something that we can link up in the show notes as well, which I do.
He's linked a few people to me.
And which is an app that can serve you on either side. If you have a podcast and you want to have some paid guests, you can be on that side of it. And then you can go into it to look for opportunities that you can pay to be on other podcasts.
Exactly.
And it makes it a win-win. I mean, it's to be fair for anybody who thinks that's a weird vibe or something. Well, if you really simplify it, you're talking about like investing marketing dollars. Do you spend it on Facebook ads? Do you buy a billboard? Do you buy a TV commercial? The other day, I was at lunch with somebody and they go, is that Ryan Pineda? Because you were on the TV here in Vegas.
Yeah.
You had a TV commercial, obviously for your flipping business.
Yeah.
But this flips that a podcast could be a commercial.
Oh, bro, I'll tell you, I tell people this all the time. Like, and I don't say this about my podcast, but like I tell our students at Wealthy Creator, I'm like, hey, it is far better for you to pay to be on someone else's podcast than to pay someone to be on yours, because, yours doesn't have like a big audience or anything. So like people make the mistake and they'll be like, oh, well, let me go get, Gary V to be on my show, right? Or something. It's like, dude, you're going to go pay like 50 G's at least or something virtually. Like you're not going to get a return on that.
Totally.
Especially if you have no audience or anything. But if you could get on Gary V's show, that would be a game changer, And so like, I already know for a fact, when people come on my podcast and they have like a product that's relevant to, entrepreneurs or real estate investors or content creators, they're selling and they're making way more than whatever they might have paid to be on.
Totally. Yeah, that's strong. So if people want to check you out, there is a part 2. Subscribe to the Think Media podcast. We're going to be talking about your book, The Wealthy Way, and the habits of successful content creators. You also, lots of resources in the show notes. I was on your show recently. We talked about even more YouTube tactics. We talked a lot about affiliate marketing. We'll link up that episode.
Sean did not pay.
Yeah, I did. Full disclosure. You're like, I just never cleared. I asked, and I was like, it's check bounced. But if people want to follow you, where are you at?
I mean, I'm everywhere. So just Ryan Pineda on all the platforms.
Amazing. And definitely check out the book on Amazon and check out part 2. Super excited about your book, The Wealthy Way. And if you're interested in Pineda Media or Wealthy Creator, all those links are in the show notes as well.